Thank you for listening to my daddy's podcast.
Hey, don't let these tears fool you. There's all dog around this mug. I'm good.
Hey, what's going on, Who Dat Nation? It is yours truly, TJ Jones. And yes, I am the host of the State of the Saints podcast. Thank you so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast, where we talk New Orleans Saints. And on this edition, we're going to be talking a little bit about Saints head coach Dennis Allen and his interview with the NFL Network. And we're also going to be talking about a new coach added to the Saints coaching staff. But before I get started with all those topics, I want to say thank you very much for choosing the State of the Saints podcast. If you have not already, I ask that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com, search the State of the Saints podcast. And also, if you are subscribed, go ahead and hit that like button. If you're on the fence, hopefully by the end of this podcast, you'll go ahead and hit that subscribe button. But let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk a little bit about Dennis Allen. As we all know, this is Dennis Allen's third season with the New Orleans Saints. It was an up and down season in 2023. The Saints finished with 9-8, the best record Dennis Allen has had as a head coach in 2 stops. And there's still a lot of question marks about Dennis Allen as a head coach. And going into 2024, the New Orleans Saints, along with Dennis Allen, are doing things a little bit differently. They decided to completely overhaul the offensive staff that they had. They did a little bit of that last season when it came to the defensive side of the football. But it seems like they are really making changes to try to make things better. And Coach Dennis Allen was on Steve Weiss' show on the NFL Network. And he talked a little bit about some of the changes that were made. And one of the key changes that everybody's been talking about is offensive coordinator Klint Kubiak, who has came over from being a passing game coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers to being offensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints. And this is what Dennis Allen had to say about his new offensive coordinator.
I've known Klint for a long time. I feel like I've known the family for, probably over 20, 30 years. I remember watching Klint's dad, Gary, play quarterback back at Texas A&M, growing up. So I feel like I've known this family. I feel like I've known this scheme for a long time, and I feel like this is the best scheme that gives your players the best chance to have success that's going in the National Football League right now. And I think Klint is highly intelligent. He's extremely hard worker. I think we've put together an outstanding staff with a little bit of a mixture of some older veteran coaches that have been there, done that, with some younger, progressive mindset type of guys. And I think it's going to be a great mixture for our organization.
One thing about the New Orleans Saints, and I'm going to give them credit for this, is they're finally trying to do some things that they have seen around the National Football League that has worked. When it comes to Kyle Shanahan, and I know when people talk about Kyle Shanahan, they say, oh, he's a good coach, but he hasn't won the big one. But one thing you can say about Kyle Shanahan is anybody that comes close to him and is around him, that learns under him, ends up being a pretty good offensive-minded coach and ends up being a pretty good head coach. I mean, you look at what Mike McDaniel is doing out there in Miami. There are so many other offensive coordinators, head coaches that have had a stop or had a cup of coffee with Kyle Shanahan, and they're a better coach because of it. He knows what he's doing. And one thing about Kyle Shanahan is he has his hands in a lot of pots, right? He's stirring, he's tasting, he's making sure that they got the right seasoning up in that thing. He's not just allowing his his chefs inside of his kitchen to just walk out there to the floor with some nasty stuff, right? He's making sure that it's well prepared. So by him having his hands in everybody's pot, these coaches are learning. They're learning the ins and outs of being a coach. And I think that it pays dividends for them when they get opportunity, like Klint Kubiak as an offensive coordinator with the team that selects them or they go with. But I look at Klint Kubiak and I know what everybody says. They say that because Kyle Shanahan is so heavily involved, what makes him any different? Well, if you look at some of the offense that is being ran around the National Football League, the offense of Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers is one of the most successful. And even Dennis Allen mentioned that when he sat down with Steve Weiss. He mentioned that this is one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in all of football. And it's one of those offenses that has evolved over the course of time, starting off with Mike Shanahan and it kind of evolved to, to his son, and he's actually taking it to another level. And, the Saints, they need to be able to run the football. I mean, this offense is a run-heavy offense, which would explain why the Saints are going out here getting new offensive line coaches, why they're getting wide receiver coaches, why they're getting a new quarterback coach. That is why they're doing these things, because they know that, you're going to have to put a lot of emphasis on running the football and approaching this offense completely different, and that sets up the play action. And Dennis Allen also talked a little bit about the play action game getting a little bit better towards the end of the season. And I will concede. I know, we were at a point where we were just kind of over the season, over the offense, over the head coach, over the quarterback. But he was right in that regard. Like you seen when they were, doing play action passes, they had guys down the field. So if you incorporate a really good running game, and the Saints have some really good running backs, right? You incorporate that and you get an offensive scheme that works, the Saints can be extremely dangerous. Now, I still feel like it all depends on this offensive line and who you have as your new offensive line coach. And, I think that is going to play a huge role. But I think the Saints need to put some time and invest some time in this offensive line in order for them to be able to, number one, protect Derek Carr, but also be able to run blocks so they can create lanes for these running backs to run through and make it hard for a defense to be able to stop this running game. And if it's hard for you to stop the running game, guess what? You got to try to do everything that you can to stop it, which sets up opportunities for Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave and A.T. Perry for these guys to make plays down the field. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this offense is going to look like. I think that Klint Kubiak definitely deserves an opportunity. And Dennis Allen understands the task at hand. No need to sugarcoat it. No need to beat around the bush. He is on a hot seat. You look at some of the reports and rankings, they got Dennis Allen pretty far to the bottom, right? He's at the bottom when it comes to coaching. And a lot of people just feel like, the reason why he still has a job is because, Mickey Loomis, his stubbornness kind of plays a role. Not so much about what Dennis Allen has done. It's more so like Mickey Loomis just refused to bend the knee and admit that this was not a good idea. But all in all, he has an opportunity to right the wrongs. Like if you go out here and you turn this team around, you already know what you're doing when it comes to the defense. Your defense is one of the best in the league. But if you can get the offense on board, this can be a dangerous football team. And I'm not concerned about the whole salary cap thing, because if you look at the salary cap when it comes to the New Orleans Saints, the salary cap isn't the reason why the Saints have had unsuccessful seasons for the last 3 seasons. It's not it. It's the fact that they had the players, but they haven't put them in a right position to succeed. I don't think it has anything to do with the guys that are on the field. Because if you match the Saints talent up against some of the talent in the National Football League, it's not like the talent that they're going up against is just head and shoulders better. They have some really good, talented players on this team. So it's a matter of trying to get these guys in the right position, getting the right coaches in here to be able to teach these guys how to be professionals, how to run routes, hold them accountable. And all those things start to come together, you'll have yourself a well-oiled machine, and maybe we can see some of the things that we saw from the New Orleans Saints when Drew Brees and Sean Payton were cooking it up. I'm not expecting for them to be Sean Payton and Drew Brees, and that's fine. I mean, as long as it's an offense that works, as long as it's an offense that can stay lock and step with some of these other teams. Most of the time it was like watching the grass grow. It was like watching paint dry, watching the New Orleans Saints play and run the offense. I mean, god awful. And it was time. No disrespect to Pete Carmichael, well respected around the National Football League, very knowledgeable guy, but I stand by what I said. I just feel like he's one of those guys that can throw ideas out there, but I don't feel like when it comes to the ebbs and flows of the game that he is the right guy for the job. Like him becoming one of the executives or the assistants to the offense in Denver, I feel like that's his lane. Like, I feel like if Pete Carmichael was never asked to be anything other than what he is right now, he wouldn't care, because I don't feel like he has those aspirations of being a head coach. I don't feel like he has aspirations really to be calling plays like that. I think that he is one of those guys, and I could be wrong, but I just feel like maybe he's content with just being a guy behind the scenes. I mean, somebody got to be able to cook something up. Somebody got to be able to burn a midnight oil and stay up to 2 a.m. finding that one play that this high school ran out in Waco, Texas, but you can probably run it against the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, somebody has to do that, right? So I think that it was time to move on, and the Saints did the right thing. So hopefully this young, innovative coaching staff can light a fire under some of these players and get these guys excited about playing the offensive side of the football. Be excited about coming to work, making Sundays fun instead of just being uptight and guys pointing at each other and it's your fault. No, it's your fault. Maybe these guys can get back to having fun. And as Saints fans all over and onlookers, we can go back to watching a team that is worth watching. So it remains to be seen as of right now, but you have to give the Saints credit. They're looking around the National Football League and they're trying to go with something that has proven to work. So we'll see if it does work for the black and gold. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about a new coach added to the Saints, the wide receiver coach. Okay, the wide receiver coach that the Saints have went with is Keith Williams. Keith Williams, he was with the Baltimore Ravens. He's a well-respected coach when it comes to the wide receivers. There are several well-respected, really good wide receivers that work out with him in the offseason. And now he's coming to the New Orleans Saints. He has a rich resume here, even a stop with the Tulane Green Waves when Curtis Johnson was the head coach. So Keith Williams is a guy that is well respected around the National Football League, and maybe he can bring something different to the wide receiver room. I think with Cody Burns, I think that he's a good coach, but I just think that it was probably a little bit too buddy-buddy. And because of that, I feel like maybe the guys didn't really, approach the game the way that they should. At the beginning of the season, there was some issues with the wide receivers not really being committed, not really knowing what the heck they're doing. And you got to look at the wide receiver coach for that. And you're not going to be doing those things if you had a coach that there was some level of fear that you had for him or some deep respect that you had for him. And I'm not saying that these guys just completely disrespect him, but I just think sometimes you need a guy that can be a little bit of a disciplinarian, that can give you a little bit of tough love from time to time, to light a fire under you sometimes when things aren't working out. And no, I'm not talking about yelling and screaming and cursing all in your face, but I'm talking about somebody that when he speaks, you listen, right? Because you know for a fact that he's giving you something that you need. And sometimes you might leave the room a little bit upset at what he's saying, but you can go back after everybody kind of calmed down and realize that he's only doing what he feels is best for your career. And I just think that this is a good move. I think the overhaul that the Saints have done this offseason is major. I think it was necessary. I think there was time for some different voices. I think it was time for a different approach. I think it was time for some of the ideas to change. When you're around the same people all the time, you start to think like him. You start to talk like them. And even some of your responses may resemble theirs. So, it was time for a change, and it was necessary. So this is another move that I'm looking forward to seeing. hopefully this can be a move that can help these wide receivers reach their full potential. So the offensive staff is looking completely different. So in 2024, the excuses for Dennis Allen not to perform as a head coach, I mean, they're getting shorter and shorter. They're starting to shrink. And everybody's going to have to eventually start to look at the guy that is the head coach of this team. If Dennis Allen can't get it done in 2024, we're going to have a conversation, and maybe some of these guys on the coaching staff may end up, moving on, or even somebody on this coaching staff may end up being the next head coach of this football team. But hopefully it doesn't come to that, because what they have done in the offseason can help this team reach the success that Saints fans have been looking for 3 seasons. But thank you all so much for checking out the State of the Saints podcast. Previous episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor FM. And you can also follow me on X at TJAY Jones 8. Till next time, all I got to say is, who dat?